Captain Derek Hayes had been preparing for this moment his entire career. First contact with an alien civilization. The kind of thing that would go down in history books. His crew buzzed with nervous energy on the bridge of the Pathfinder as they waited for the transmission to connect. When the view screen flickered to life, Derek's world stopped. She was breathtaking. Tall and regal, with skin that looked like polished black stone catching starlight. Her eyes shifted colors, flowing from silver to deep violet like living metal. Intricate patterns glowed faintly along her temples and down her neck, pulsing with a soft blue light. But that wasn't what made Derek's heart slam against his ribs. He knew her face. He knew the exact way her head tilted when she was thinking. He knew that the small ridge above her left eye twitched when she was annoyed. He knew that she hummed a particular melody when she thought no one was listening. Vira, the name escaped his lips before his brain could catch up. It was barely a whisper, but in the dead silence of the bridge, it might as well have been a shout. Every head on the bridge turned toward him. Lieutenant Rodriguez's eyes went wide. Even the normally unflappable Commander Peters looked stunned. On the view screen, the alien queen's expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed. The glowing patterns along her skin flared brighter for just a second. "I am Queen Viranes of the Tauron Empire," she said, her voice carrying an edge like a blade. "We have never met, human captain. This is the first contact between our species. You will explain how you know a name that only my family uses." Derek felt like he was drowning. His hands gripped the armrest of his captain's chair so hard his knuckles went white. This didn't make sense. According to every record, every database, every historical document humanity had, they'd never gone beyond their own solar system until 6 months ago. The Pathfinder was part of the first wave of deep space exploration. He'd never left Earth's star system before this mission. He'd never been to an alien world. He'd never met this woman. But God help him, he remembered it all. He remembered meeting her 5 years ago on a trading station orbiting a gas giant. She'd been traveling in disguise, trying to see the galaxy outside her royal duties. He'd bumped into her at a marketplace, spilling a container of some local fruit all over both of them. They'd laughed about it for hours afterward. He remembered their first real conversation, sitting on an observation deck watching a nebula bloom across the stars. She told him about the weight of a crown she didn't ask for. He told her about growing up poor in Chicago, dreaming of the stars while wondering where his next meal would come from. He remembered the moment he realized he loved her. She'd been singing, that same melody she always hummed, while they prepared dinner together in the tiny quarters of his old ship. The light had caught her just right, and his heart had simply known. He remembered proposing to her on Tauros 7, under 3 moons, with a ring he'd spent 6 months designing. Half human silver, half Tauron crystal that pulsed with its own inner light. He remembered their wedding. Derek's hand moved to the chain around his neck. He never took it off. His fingers closed around the ring hanging there. "Captain Hayes, what are you doing?" Commander Peters hissed, but Derek was already standing, already pulling the chain over his head. He held up the ring toward the view screen. The Tauron crystal inside it pulsed with soft blue light, the same frequency as the patterns on Viranes' skin. It was responding to her proximity even across the transmission. "Then explain this," Derek said, his voice rough with emotion. "Our wedding ring. From the ceremony on Tauros 7. 3 years ago. You wore a dress made of living light. I couldn't stop shaking because I was so nervous. Your brother made a joke about humans and their sweaty palms, and you told him to shut up in that way you do, where you sound royal and annoyed at the same time." The bridge was dead silent. Derek could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. On the view screen, chaos erupted. Tauron guards in sleek armor materialized around Viranes, their weapons humming to life with an angry red glow. Her advisors, tall and imposing figures flanking her throne, started shouting in their language. The words were harsh and rapid. But Derek only watched Viranes. He saw it. That split second before her royal mask slammed back into place. Her eyes went wide. Her hand started to move toward her throat, fingers reaching for something that should have been there. Then she caught herself, forced her hand back down. "Impossible," she breathed, and the translator picked it up even though she'd said it so quietly. "This is some kind of trick. A human deception. Search your records," Derek said desperately. "Look for inconsistencies. Gaps. Moments where things don't quite add up. Because I'm looking at mine and Vira, nothing makes sense. I have 2 sets of memories in my head. One where I never left home until this mission. And another where I've spent the last 5 years exploring the galaxy. Where I met you. Where I married you. Where we built a life together. One of her advisors stepped forward, speaking rapidly. Varanis raised a hand, silencing him without looking away from Derek. "You claim we are married," she said slowly. "Yet I have never left Tauron space until this diplomatic mission. I have never met a human before this moment. I have ruled my people for 7 years without pause." "I know," Derek said, and he felt the truth of it in his bones even though it made no sense. "I know that's what the records say. I know that's what you remember. But I also know that somewhere, somehow we loved each other. And I can prove it." "How?" Derek's jaw clenched. "You have a scar on your back. Shaped like a star. You got it when you were 6 years old, climbing the spires of the royal palace. You fell 3 stories before the guards caught you. You've never told anyone because a queen is supposed to be perfect, unmarked. You cover it with makeup for ceremonies. Every weapon on that alien ship pointed at the view screen. But Varanis had gone perfectly still. The color shifting in her eyes stopped, frozen on a pale silver that looked almost afraid. "No one knows that," she whispered. "No one." "I know it," Derek said softly, "because you told me. On our wedding night. You said you'd never shown anyone before. That you trusted me with the parts of yourself you kept hidden from the rest of the universe." A tear traced down Varanis's cheek, leaving a glowing trail across her dark skin. She looked shattered and terrified and confused all at once. "I feel like I'm going insane," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Because looking at you feels like coming home. And that's impossible. We're strangers. We have to be strangers. But you're standing there with that ring and those memories and I feel like I'm remembering something that's still happening. Like you're a stranger and my husband at the same time." Derek's own eyes burned. "I know. I feel it too." The transmission cut off abruptly. The view screen went dark. And Derek stood there on his bridge, holding a wedding ring that shouldn't exist, remembering a life that never happened, and knowing with absolute certainty that somewhere in the fabric of reality itself, something had gone very, very wrong. They didn't even give Derek a chance to explain. Within an hour, a Tauron boarding party materialized on the Pathfinder. They were polite but firm. Commander Peters tried to intervene, but Derek stopped him with a raised hand. "It's okay," Derek said quietly. "I need to talk to her anyway. Let them take me." The Tauron flagship was massive, easily 10 times the size of any human vessel. They walked Derek through corridors that seemed to be carved from living crystal, glowing with soft light. Everything hummed with energy. It should have felt alien and frightening. But Derek recognized it. He'd walked these halls before. At least part of him remembered walking them. They put him in a detention cell that was surprisingly comfortable. A bed that adjusted to his body, walls that displayed calming images of alien landscapes, even a small window showing the stars outside. Still a cage though. Still locked in. Derek sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. What was happening to him? Was he losing his mind? Had some kind of space radiation scrambled his brain during the journey here? But the memories felt so real. More real than anything else in his life. He could remember the exact taste of Tauron honey wine. The way Vira's hand fit perfectly in his. The sound of her laugh when he tried and failed to pronounce words in her language. He could remember things that hadn't happened yet in this timeline. Diplomatic conferences. Meeting her family. The weight of her crown when she'd let him hold it once, late at night, both of them laughing at how heavy responsibility really was. 3 days passed. Guards brought him food. Tauron cuisine that his mind said he'd never tasted before, but his heart recognized. He ate in silence, watching the stars, trying to make sense of the impossible. On the 3rd night, the door to his cell opened. Varanis stood there alone. No guards. No advisors. Just her, wearing simpler clothes than the royal outfit from the transmission. She looked tired. The glowing patterns on her skin were dim, barely visible. "Show me," she said. It wasn't a request. It was a demand from someone barely holding themselves together. "Show me everything. All your proof. All your lies. Whatever they are, I need to see them." Derek stood slowly. He pulled out his personal data pad, the one thing they'd let him keep. His hands shook as he activated it. Holographic images filled the small cell. 3-dimensional, full color, impossibly detailed. There was Derek and Varanis at a street festival on some alien world, both of them wearing ridiculous hats they'd bought from a vendor. There was Varanis teaching Derek some kind of Tauron combat technique, both of them sweating and laughing. There was Derek showing Varanis old Earth movies, her face lit up with delight at the terrible special effects. Image after image. Video after video. A life together spanning years. Varanis stood frozen watching. Her breath came faster. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. These are fabrications, she whispered, but she couldn't look away. Computer generated. Some kind of advanced human technology we don't know about. Then explain the details, Derek said softly. He zoomed in on one image. That's the Royal Gardens on Tauros Prime. But not the public section. That's the private area behind the East Wing. The place where the silver flowers grow that only bloom once every 3 years. You took me there on our first anniversary. Varanes' eyes went wide. That area is restricted. It's not on any public maps. Not even in our official databases. How could you possibly know about it? Derek pulled up another video. This one was quieter, more intimate. Just the two of them in what looked like living quarters. Varanes was sitting on a couch, and Derek was behind her, carefully braiding her hair while she talked about some political problem she was dealing with. You always asked me to braid your hair when you were stressed, Derek said. You said it helped you think. That the repetitive motion was soothing. And you talked through your problems while I did it, and somehow by the end, you'd figured out the solution. A sound escaped Varanes' throat. Something between a sob and a gasp. Derek pulled up an audio file. Pressed play. Varanes' voice filled the cell. Soft and vulnerable in a way that the Queen would never allow in public. Sometimes I'm so tired of being perfect, Derek. Tired of the crown and the expectations and never being allowed to just be myself. But with you I can let it all go. With you I'm not Queen Varanes. I'm just Vyra. And that's enough. The present Varanes was crying now. Tears leaving glowing trails down her dark cheeks. She reached out toward the hologram like she wanted to touch it. I never told anyone that, she whispered. I never said those words to anyone. But I remember thinking them. Feeling them. Wishing I had someone I could say them to. You did say them, Derek insisted. You said them to me. On a night when some diplomatic crisis had gone wrong and you were exhausted. We were in our quarters on Tauros 7. You'd just taken off your crown and thrown it on the table like it was burning you. And you said you wished you could just run away sometimes. Just be normal. Varanes turned to him, her eyes wild. Stop. Stop it. You're describing things from my dreams. Conversations I've had with myself late at night when I couldn't sleep. Feelings I've never shared with anyone. Or maybe, Derek said carefully, they're not dreams. Maybe they're memories. She shook her head violently. That's impossible. I've been queen for 7 years. I've never left Tauron space except for this mission. I've certainly never met a human before. We didn't even know humans existed until your ships appeared 6 months ago. I know, Derek said, frustration creeping into his voice. I know what the records say. According to everything humanity has, we never achieved faster than light travel until last year. We never left our solar system. I grew up on Earth. I went to the academy on Mars. I got my first command 2 years ago. I've never been to Tauron space. Then how do you have these images? These recordings? I don't know. Derek's voice cracked. I don't understand any of this. But I have 2 sets of memories in my head. 2 complete lives. In one, I'm exactly who my records say I am. Just another human captain on his first deep space mission. But in the other, I'm someone who's been exploring the galaxy for a decade. Who met you 5 years ago. Who fell in love with you. Who married you. He pulled up one more image. This one made Varanes gasp out loud. It was their wedding. Derek in a human suit modified with Tauron elements. Varanes in a dress that seemed to be made of pure light, shifting colors with every movement. They were standing under 3 moons, hands clasped together, surrounded by both humans and Taurons. I remember every second of that day, Derek said quietly. You were so nervous you were shaking. Your brother kept making jokes to try to calm you down. My best friend gave a speech that made everyone cry and laugh at the same time. We wrote our own vows. You promised to show me the galaxy. I promised to keep you grounded when the weight of your crown got too heavy. Varanes reached out with a trembling hand and touched the hologram. Her fingers passed through the image of herself in the wedding dress. I've had dreams about a wedding, she whispered. For months now. Ever since we first detected your ships approaching our space. I thought it was just stress. Anxiety about first contact. But in the dreams, I'm wearing that exact dress. Standing under 3 moons just like that. And there's someone standing across from me, but I could never see their face clearly. She turned to Derek, and the look in her eyes was desperate and terrified and hopeful all at once. Was it you? In my dreams, was it always you? Derek felt his own tears starting. I think so. And I think somehow, someway we need to figure out what happened. Because this isn't just strange. This is reality itself not making sense. And if we don't understand it, I'm afraid we're going to lose each other again. Varani stood there for a long moment just looking at him. Then slowly, hesitantly, she reached up and touched the side of his face. The moment her skin made contact with his, they both gasped. A shock of recognition went through them. Like two puzzle pieces clicking together. Like coming home after a long journey. "I know you," she breathed. "I don't understand how or why. But I know you." Derek covered her hand with his own. "I know you too, Vyra. And I'm going to find out what happened to us. I promise." She nodded, pulling her hand back reluctantly. "I'm going to have my scientists examine your evidence. All of it. And Derek, if this is real, if something did happen to reality itself, then we have bigger problems than either of us realize." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "I'm scared that you're telling the truth. And I'm scared that you're not. Because either way, nothing makes sense anymore." "I know," Derek said. "I'm scared too." After she left, Derek sat in the darkness, holding the ring, and wondered what force in the universe was powerful enough to make two people forget they loved each other. The scientist came to Derek's cell in the middle of the night cycle. He was tall and thin even for a Tauron, with nervous energy radiating from every movement. His skin patterns flickered erratically, like a light bulb about to burn out. "My name is Rivek," he whispered urgently, glancing over his shoulder at the empty corridor. "I'm a temporal physicist assigned to the Royal Science Division. I need to speak with you before the others silence me." Derek sat up quickly. "Silence you? What are you talking about?" Rivek pulled out a small device and pressed it against the wall. A shimmer of energy spread across the cell, and suddenly the background hum of the ship went dead quiet. "Privacy field," Rivek explained. "We have maybe 10 minutes before security notices. Captain Hayes, I've analyzed your evidence. The images, the recordings, the molecular signature of that ring you carry. Everything checks out as authentic. But that's not the impossible part." He pulled up a holographic display between them, showing complex mathematical equations and star charts that made Derek's head hurt. "The impossible part is this. I ran a spectral analysis of the cosmic background radiation in your recordings. The specific wavelength patterns of distant quasars, the light signatures from nebulae, even the gravitational wave patterns. They're all wrong." "Wrong how?" "They don't match our current universe," Rivek said, his voice shaking. "They match a different configuration. A different timeline. Captain, 52 years ago the Tauron Empire was desperate. We'd hit a wall with space travel. Our ships could only go so fast and it was taking generations to explore even our local cluster. So we did something reckless." He pulled up another image. Some kind of massive machine built in the orbit of a dying star. "We built the temporal accelerator. The theory was that we could punch through spacetime itself, create shortcuts between distant points. What we actually did was far worse. We tore reality open. Created fractures in the fabric of time itself." Derek felt his blood run cold. "What kind of fractures?" "Multiple timelines, all existing simultaneously. Parallel universes where different choices led to different outcomes. For most people, nothing changed. Their consciousness stayed locked to one timeline. But the fractures never fully healed. They've been spreading, growing, intersecting with each other for decades." Rivek's hands shook as he manipulated the display, showing branching pathways that split and merged and tangled like twisted roots. "I think what happened to you and Queen Veranis is this. You both exist at an intersection point. A place where two major timelines have collided. In one timeline, humanity achieved faster than light travel 30 years ago. You explored the galaxy, met the Tauron Empire, and yes, you fell in love with our queen. You lived that life. It was real. And in this timeline? In this timeline, humanity stayed isolated. The Tauron Empire had different leadership, made different choices. You and Veranis never met. But the timelines are bleeding into each other. Strong emotional connections, powerful bonds between people, those can transcend the barriers between realities. Your love for each other was so strong that even across different timelines, you still remember." Derek's mind reeled. It was insane. It was impossible. But it also made a horrible kind of sense. "Is this happening to other people?" "Yes," Rivek said grimly. "I've been documenting cases for years. People remembering events that never happened. Skills they never learned. Relationships with people they've never met. The Tauron government has been suppressing the reports, calling it mass delusion or mental illness. But it's getting worse. The more the timelines bleed together, the more people are experiencing fractured memories." He pulled up a list of names and cases. Hundreds of them. Thousands. There's a Tauron engineer who remembers working alongside human colleagues on a space station that doesn't exist. A human woman on Earth who keeps dreaming about her Tauron children, even though she's never left her planet. A merchant who has two completely different sets of memories about how he lost his leg. It's spreading, Captain. Reality itself is becoming unstable. Derek ran his hands through his hair. Why hasn't anyone done anything about this? If you know what's happening, why aren't your people trying to fix it? Rivek's expression darkened. Because some people don't want it fixed. There's a faction within the Tauron military, a secret group that's been monitoring the timeline collapse for decades. They call themselves the Keepers. And they believe that the original timeline, the one where you and Veranes met, leads to something catastrophic. What kind of catastrophic? I don't know the details. The Keepers keep their information locked down tight. But I've heard whispers. Something about an invasion from outside our galaxy. An enemy so powerful that it destroyed both the Tauron Empire and humanity. They believe that your relationship with Queen Veranes was somehow the catalyst. That the alliance between our species, formed too early, led to decisions that doomed us all. Derek felt sick. So they rewrote reality? Tried to force us apart? Not rewrote. Guided. When the timeline started fracturing, the Keepers had a choice. They could try to repair the damage, merge everything back into one cohesive reality. Or they could choose which timeline became dominant. They chose this one. The one where humans and Taurans meet later, under different circumstances, without the bond between you and the Queen. But it didn't work. We still remember each other. Rivek nodded. Your connection is stronger than they anticipated. Love, real love, apparently has a quantum signature that transcends temporal manipulation. You and Veranes are like magnets that keep snapping back together no matter how many times reality tries to pull you apart. And that's terrifying to the Keepers because if you two remember, others will start remembering. The carefully constructed timeline will begin to unravel. Derek stood and paced the small cell. Veranes needs to know this. We need to tell her everything. She already suspects, Rivek said quietly. Why do you think she came to see you alone? She's been having the dream memories for months, ever since your ships entered Tauron space. The closer you physically got to each other, the stronger the bleed-through became. She's been questioning her own sanity. He glanced at his device, which was beeping urgently. I'm out of time. Security is coming. But Captain, you need to understand something. The Keepers won't let this continue. They'll either force you to accept memory suppression, or they'll eliminate you both entirely. They've invested too much in maintaining this timeline to let it collapse now. I don't care about their timeline, Derek said fiercely. I care about the truth. I care about Vyra. Then you need to decide what you're willing to risk. Because choosing her, choosing to remember, might mean choosing to face whatever catastrophe the Keepers were trying to prevent. They claim your love dooms both our species. Are you willing to bet everything that they're wrong? The privacy field dropped. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Rivek moved toward the door then paused. One more thing. I've been accessing restricted archives trying to understand what the Keepers know. I found references to something called the Devourers. Ships that appear from nowhere, consume everything and leave nothing but empty space behind. In the original timeline they arrived 15 years from now. And according to the Keepers' projections, the alliance you and Veranes formed couldn't stop them. But maybe we didn't have all the information, Derek said. Maybe if we know they're coming we can prepare differently. Maybe, Rivek said doubtfully. Or maybe the Keepers are right and some things are inevitable. I don't know. But I believe people deserve the truth, even if it's terrifying. He slipped out just as the guards arrived. They looked suspicious but said nothing, just took up their positions outside the cell. Derek sat back down on the bed, his mind spinning. Two timelines. One where he loved Veranes and they faced some unknown horror together. Another where they were strangers, kept apart by forces trying to prevent disaster. But here was the thing those forces didn't understand about humans. You tell a human they can't have something, that they're not allowed to remember, not allowed to love, not allowed to choose their own path? That just makes them more determined. Derek pulled out the ring again, watching it pulse with inner light. Somewhere in the tangled mess of multiple realities, he'd made a promise to this woman. For better or worse. In sickness and health. Across time itself, apparently. He wasn't about to break that promise just because the universe had gotten complicated. Tomorrow he'd find a way to see Veranes again. They'd figure this out together. And if some secret military faction thought they could dictate what people remembered or who they loved, they were about to learn a hard lesson about human stubbornness. Nobody rewrote Derek Hayes's life and got away with it. Not even the guardians of reality itself. Derek didn't have to wait long. The next morning they came for him. But these weren't regular guards. These Taurans wore armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No insignias. No identification marks. They moved with the precision of elite soldiers who'd seen real combat. They didn't say a word. Just gestured for Derek to follow. They walked through sections of the ship Derek hadn't seen before. Deeper levels where the walls were reinforced metal instead of crystal. Where the air felt heavier, more controlled. Security checkpoints every 50 feet, each one scanning them before allowing passage. Finally, they reached a room that looked like a command center. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing star charts, timeline diagrams, and data streams that moved too fast to read. And standing in the center of it all was a Tauran who radiated authority like heat from a fire. Captain Derek Hayes, the Tauran said, his voice deep and measured. I am General Korthas, commander of the Keepers of Singular Path. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Derek remained standing. I'd rather stand, thanks. Especially when I'm talking to people who've been messing with my memories. Korthas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Your memories are your own, Captain. We haven't touched them. We've simply tried to ensure that this timeline, this version of events, remains stable and dominant. Your consciousness, however, appears to be remarkably resilient. You mean my love for Veranes is inconvenient for your plans? Your attachment to Queen Veranes is indeed problematic, Korthas agreed calmly. He gestured to one of the displays. It showed Earth but wrong somehow. Cities in flames. Ships falling from orbit. This is what happened in the original timeline, Captain. 23 years after your species achieved faster than light travel. 15 years after you married Queen Veranes. The image shifted, showing Tauran worlds suffering the same fate. Beautiful crystal cities crumbling. Fleets of ships being torn apart by weapons that looked like they were made of solid darkness. We call them the Devourers, Korthas continued. They came from the space between galaxies. Ships that consume matter and energy, leaving nothing but void. In the original timeline, they arrived and neither humanity nor the Tauran Empire could stop them. Billions died. Both civilizations fell within a decade. Derek felt his stomach turn, but he kept his voice steady. And you're saying this was somehow our fault? Mine and Veranes's? Not fault. Consequence. Korthas pulled up another display, this one showing a complex web of decisions and outcomes. When you married Queen Veranes, you created the strongest alliance our two species had ever seen. Humanity brought innovation and adaptability. The Taurans brought advanced technology and resources. Together, you pushed exploration farther and faster than either species could have alone. That sounds like a good thing. It was until you pushed too far. Your joint expedition into the Void Sector encountered the Devourers 3 decades earlier than they would have naturally reached our space. You essentially rang the dinner bell and showed them where to find 2 thriving civilizations. The war was inevitable from that point. Derek's hands clenched into fists. So your solution was to rewrite history? Keep humans isolated until it's too late for us to accidentally trigger first contact with these things? Our solution was to delay the meeting between our species. To ensure that when humanity and the Tauran Empire do form an alliance, it happens under different circumstances. Later. With more preparation. And most importantly, without the emotional complications that clouded judgment in the original timeline. Emotional complications? Derek repeated flatly. You mean love? Korthas met his eyes without flinching. Yes. Your marriage to the Queen created political complications that influenced major decisions. There were accusations of favoritism, of security risks, of divided loyalties. When the Devourers came, critical mistakes were made because personal feelings interfered with tactical necessity. We cannot afford to repeat those mistakes. You're lying, Derek said, but doubt crept into his voice. You can't know all this for certain. You're guessing. We're not guessing. Korthas pulled up another display, this one showing a device that looked ancient and alien, built from technology Derek didn't recognize. This is the Temporal Archive. A piece of precursor technology we discovered buried on one of our colony worlds. It doesn't just show possible futures. It shows actual timelines that have already occurred. We watched the original timeline play out. We saw every death. Every destroyed world. We know exactly what your love for Queen Veranes costs. The door behind Derek opened. He turned to see Veranes being escorted in by more of the silent guards. She looked furious and frightened at the same time. What is this, Korthas? She demanded. You bring me here under armed guard? To my own ship. This ceased being your ship the moment you compromised yourself, Your Majesty, Korthas said coldly. The Keepers have been protecting the Tauron Empire for generations. We serve the crown, but we serve the survival of our species first. Varanes' skin patterns flared bright with anger. You have no authority to detain me. We have every authority when reality itself is at stake. Korthas gestured and the displays changed again, now showing recent data. Over the past week, we've detected a 40% increase in timeline bleed-through events. People across both empires are starting to remember the original timeline. Your connection to Captain Hayes is destabilizing the carefully constructed reality we've maintained for decades. He turned to look at both of them. The temporal archive is reaching critical instability. If this continues, the timelines will collapse completely. We'll have chaos, mass confusion, possibly even a reality fracture that could tear space-time apart in this entire sector. Then fix it properly, Derek said. Stop trying to suppress one timeline and let them merge naturally. Let people remember the truth. The truth will doom us all. Korthas slammed his fist on a console. For the first time his composure cracked. You weren't there, Captain. You didn't watch your homeworld burn. You didn't see children crying for parents who'd been consumed by those things. You didn't have to make the choice between preserving our species or honoring the memory of the dead. He took a breath, forcing himself calm again. We offer you both a choice. Accept voluntary memory suppression. We have technology that can sever the quantum entanglement between your consciousnesses. You'll forget the original timeline completely. You'll meet for the first time as strangers and perhaps form an alliance eventually. But it will be clean, professional, without the complications. And if we refuse? Varanes asked quietly. Then we'll be forced to ensure you cannot destabilize reality further. The Keepers have protocols for dealing with temporal anomalies. Permanent protocols. Derek felt a chill. You're threatening to kill us. We're offering you life, Captain. Just a different version of it. One where you don't remember what you've lost. One where both our species have a chance at survival. Korthas's expression softened slightly. I take no pleasure in this. But I've seen the alternative. I've watched the recordings of the end. If I have to sacrifice 2 lives to save billions, I will make that choice without hesitation. Varanes moved to stand beside Derek. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining automatically. You're wrong, she said firmly. You think love made us weak in the original timeline. But maybe it made us strong. Maybe we lost because we didn't have enough time, not because we cared too much. Your Majesty. I'm not finished. Varanes cut him off, and there was steel in her voice. The voice of a queen who'd ruled through political storms and assassination attempts. You've hidden behind your temporal archive, making decisions for billions of people without their knowledge or consent. You've played God with reality itself. But you're still just guessing. You don't know if suppressing our memories will actually prevent the devourers from coming. You just hope it will. Korthas was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You're right. We are making our best guess. But it's an educated guess based on data from an actual timeline. What's your alternative? Hope that love conquers all? That's not a strategy. That's faith. Faith is all humanity ever had, Derek said. We climbed out of caves and built civilizations on faith. We reached for the stars when everyone said it was impossible. We survived wars and plagues and disasters because we had faith in each other. Maybe that's our real strength. Pretty words won't stop the devourers, Captain. No, but knowledge will. You know they're coming. You know when and where. That's 15 years to prepare. To build defenses. To research their weaknesses. In the original timeline we were surprised. This time we won't be. Korthas looked at them both, and for just a moment, Derek saw the weight of decades of impossible decisions in his eyes. You have 24 hours to decide, he finally said. Accept suppression or we'll have to take more permanent measures. I'm sorry. But the survival of 2 species outweighs the love of 2 people. The guards escorted them out separately. But as Derek was led away, he looked back at Varanes. Their eyes met across the room. And in that moment, without words, they both knew their answer. Some things were worth fighting for, even if the entire universe said otherwise. Derek didn't waste the 24 hours they'd given him. He spent the first hour figuring out how to bypass the cell's security. Turned out that human ingenuity and a willingness to break expensive equipment could work wonders. The second hour, he hacked into the ship's communication array using a trick Commander Peters had taught him years ago. By the third hour he was broadcasting. Not just to the Tauron flagship. Not just to the Pathfinder. He sent his message everywhere. Every human ship in the fleet. Every Tauron vessel in the system. Every colony, every station, every inhabited world within transmission range. He uploaded everything. Every image. Every recording. Every piece of evidence he had about the fractured timelines. His memories with Veranis. Revek's research. Even the conversation with Korthas and his threats. And then he told the truth. "My name is Captain Derek Hayes," he said into the camera, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "And I'm about to tell you something that sounds absolutely insane. Reality isn't what you think it is. Your memories might not be entirely your own. And there's a secret organization that's been manipulating timeline itself to control our futures." He explained it all. The temporal accelerator. The fractured timelines. The keepers and their efforts to suppress the original reality. The devourers and the threat they represented. "They want us to forget," Derek said. "They want me to forget the woman I love because they think our relationship somehow doomed both our species. Maybe they're right. Maybe in the original timeline we made mistakes. But here's what I know about being human. We don't get better by running from our mistakes. We get better by learning from them." He held up the ring, letting it catch the light. "This ring represents a love so strong it survived across different versions of reality. That should tell you something. Love isn't a weakness. It's not a complication or an emotional liability. It's the thing that makes us fight harder, care more, try impossible things because someone we care about believes we can." The broadcast went on for 20 minutes before Korthas's people shut it down. But by then the damage was done. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On Earth, people started flooding social media with their own impossible memories. A teacher in Boston who remembered Tauron students in her classroom. A mechanic in Sydney who knew how to repair alien engines he'd never seen before. Thousands of people suddenly realizing their dreams weren't just dreams. On Tauron worlds the same thing happened. People who'd dismissed their fractured memories as mental illness suddenly understood they were real. Engineers who knew human technology. Soldiers who remembered fighting alongside human allies. Families who recalled human friends and loved ones. The collective consciousness of both species began rejecting the suppressed timeline. And reality itself started to crack under the pressure. Aboard the flagship, alarms blared. The temporal archive, Korthas's precious device, started overloading. Too many people remembering. Too many minds pulling at the fabric of the constructed reality. They dragged Derek from his cell. The corridors were chaos now. Crew members stumbling, clutching their heads as two sets of memories tried to coexist. Guards who couldn't decide if Derek was a prisoner or an honored guest because in one timeline he was a threat, and in another he was the Queen's husband. They brought him to the archive chamber. Veranis was already there, restrained but fighting. Korthas stood before the ancient device, which was pulsing with unstable energy. "What have you done?" Korthas shouted at Derek. "The archive is collapsing. If both timelines try to exist simultaneously, it will tear a hole in spacetime that could consume this entire star system." "Then stop fighting it," Derek yelled back. "Stop trying to suppress one timeline over the other. Let them merge. That's impossible. You can't merge contradictory realities. Humans do it every day." Derek pulled free from the guards, who seemed too confused by their own fractured memories to hold him properly. "We hold contradictory ideas in our heads all the time. We're scared and brave. Selfish and generous. We fail and succeed. We're walking contradictions, and that's what makes us adaptable." He moved toward Veranis. The guards reached for him, but she shouted something in Tauron that made them hesitate. "Listen to me," Derek said, looking between Korthas and the destabilizing archive. "You've been treating this like a problem to solve. Like there's one correct timeline and one wrong timeline. But what if they're both real? Both valid? What if the answer isn't choosing one or the other, but accepting both?" "That's philosophical nonsense," Korthas snapped, but Derek could see doubt in his eyes. The archive pulsed brighter. Cracks appeared in the air around it, showing glimpses of other realities. In one the room was on fire. In another it didn't exist at all. In a third everyone was dead. Veranis broke free from her restraints with a strength that surprised everyone. She ran to Derek, and the moment they touched, something incredible happened. The archive stabilized. Just for a second, but everyone saw it. "That's it," Revek said from somewhere in the chaos. He'd appeared with several other scientists, all looking terrified and fascinated. "Their quantum entangled across timelines. Their connection is actually stabilizing the collapse." "What does that mean?" Veranis demanded. "It means you two are the anchor points." Revek was frantically working on a console. If you can both consciously accept both timelines, hold both sets of memories as equally valid, you might be able to merge them smoothly instead of letting them collapse chaotically. Derek looked at Veranis. Are you ready for this? It's going to hurt. Remembering everything. Living with contradictions in our heads. Knowing that we both did and didn't live those years together. She laughed and it was slightly hysterical. I'm terrified. But I'd rather have a confusing truth than a comfortable lie. They held hands and approached the archive together. Corthus tried to stop them, but an explosion of temporal energy threw everyone back. Everyone except Derek and Veranis. They stood in the eye of the storm, reality fracturing around them like broken glass. And they made a choice. They accepted it all. Yes, they were meeting for the first time as strangers from species that had never encountered each other. Yes, they'd been married for 3 years and had built a life together exploring the galaxy. Both were true. Both had happened. Both were real. The pain was excruciating. Derek felt like his head was splitting apart as two complete lives tried to occupy the same space. He remembered graduating from the Academy on Mars and also graduating from the Joint Human Tauran Officer program on Tauros Prime. He remembered his first command being the Pathfinder and also commanding an exploration vessel called the Wanderer. He remembered meeting Veranis for the first time last week and also meeting her 5 years ago in a marketplace. Both. Always both. Veranis screamed beside him, her skin patterns going wild as her own memories merged and intertwined. Queen who'd never left Tauron space. Explorer who'd seen 100 worlds. Both. The same person living 2 lives that both happened. The archive exploded in a wave of pure temporal energy that swept through the ship, through the fleet, through both species across dozens of worlds. And reality rebuilt itself. Not as one timeline or the other. As both. As something new entirely. When Derek opened his eyes, he was lying on the floor with Veranis beside him. Every muscle hurt. His head felt like it had been squeezed through a pasta maker. But he remembered everything. Both timelines existing simultaneously in his mind. And somehow, impossibly, it made sense. Did we just rewrite the laws of physics? Veranis groaned beside him. I think we just proved that consciousness is stranger than physics, Derek replied. Around them the crew was recovering. People looking shocked but also relieved. Clear-eyed in a way they hadn't been before. They remembered both timelines too now. Everyone did. Corthus pulled himself up, looking decades older. This is impossible. This shouldn't work. But it does, Rivek said, checking his instruments with shaking hands. The timelines have merged. Fully integrated. Both histories exist simultaneously now. People remember both. We can access knowledge and experience from both realities. Which means we know the Devourers are coming, Derek said, getting to his feet and helping Veranis up. We have 15 years to prepare. But this time we have knowledge from a timeline where we failed and we can learn from those mistakes. We have twice the experience, twice the perspective. Veranis looked at Corthus. You tried to protect us by limiting us. By making us forget. But humanity just taught us something important. Sometimes the answer isn't choosing between difficult options. Sometimes it's finding a way to embrace both. Corthus was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he knelt. Your Majesty, Captain Hayes, I may have been wrong. Time will tell if this merged timeline can succeed where the original failed. But you've certainly proven that love can transcend impossible odds. Derek pulled out the ring. It pulsed with light, reacting to Veranis' presence. He turned to her with a smile. So, Queen Veranis, we've been married for 3 years and also we've never met. Reality is weird now. But I'm thinking we should probably make it official in this merged timeline. What do you say? She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Derek had ever heard in either timeline. Are you proposing to me, Captain Hayes? Again? For the first time? I am. Then yes. In every timeline. In every version of reality. Yes. They kissed as both timelines, both histories, both lives became one truth. 3 months later they held a second wedding ceremony. Or a first wedding ceremony. Depending on how you looked at it. Both timelines remembered both versions as equally real. Humans and Taurans stood together under Earth's moon and Tauros's twin satellites, making 3 moons total. 2 species united not by forgetting their mistakes but by learning from them. The Devourers would come eventually. That threat was real in both timelines. But they'd face it together. With the knowledge of what went wrong before. With twice the experience. With an alliance forged not just by necessity but by love that had survived across multiple versions of reality itself. As Derek and Veranis exchanged rings, he whispered, "Thank you for being stubborn enough to remember." She whispered back, Thank you for being human enough to believe love mattered more than reality. And somewhere in the quantum fabric of the universe, two timelines that should have destroyed each other instead became something stronger together. Just like the two people at the center of it all.